This has to be the most important sub-D modeling technique I've learned. Hey guys, today I'm going to show you a really quick and simple technique I always use when sub-D modeling. If you don't know what sub-D modeling is, it's a quad-based modeling workflow used to create models optimized to work best with the subdivision surface modifier in Blender. This workflow is great for creating models where you can easily adjust the level of detail using the subdivision surface modifier, and it's also used a lot in certain niches inside of 3D such as visualization, VFX, and other pipelines where you're going to want to have some quite high detail models where you can easily adjust the level of detail using the subdivision surface modifier. I've also got an introduction to sub-D modeling video planned for the near future, so if you want to learn more about this subject, I'd highly recommend subscribing and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified when I make that new video. So to start here, I'm just going to go ahead and add a cube and a cylinder to demonstrate this technique. So I'll press Shift and then A to open the Add menu, and then under Mesh, I'm just going to choose Cube. Then I'm also going to add a cylinder, so I'm going to press Shift and then A again to open the Add menu, and this time under Mesh, I'm just going to choose Cylinder. If you do forget the hotkey, you can go ahead and left click this add button up here, and you can also find all of the different objects you can add here. Now I'm going to make sure I've got my cylinder selected, so if you can't select it here, you can select it in the top right hand corner as well. And then I'll just press G to grab the object, and then I'm going to press X, which is going to lock it to this red X axis. Then once I'm happy with its position, I'll just left click to save its position. Then I'm going to left click my cube, and this is what we're going to get started with. So if I come to this blue spanner icon here, it's going to take me to the modifier properties menu, and this is where I can actually add my subdivision surface. So I'm going to press add modifier, and then under generate, I'm going to choose subdivision surface. I'm going to set my Catmull Clark level viewport to 2 for now, to give it a little bit more to work with. Something in sub-D modeling that can be a struggle though is trying to maintain the shape of the object, and that's what this technique is going to help solve. Because of course, if you've gone ahead and modeled something complex, and then you add a subdivision surface modifier to it, it can deform it quite harshly like it has to this cube. And maybe we do want a little bit of smoothness, but not to this extent. So to go ahead and use this technique, I'm going to press Tab, and that's going to take me into edit mode. You can notice how my object is still like a cube, and that's because this modifier is only really affecting the appearance of our object just now, and so we can still make adjustments in edit mode to affect how the subdivision surface modifier will work. Essentially what I'm going to want to do is I want to make sure I have all of my outside edges selected. So right now you can see I've got all those selected, but if I had more edges for example, then I would want to maybe exclude those. But since I have everything selected, I'm going to go ahead and do this technique by just holding down Control and then pressing B to access the bevel command. Straight away, you can see that our cube is starting to look more like a cube again. This is a good start, but there's a few specific settings we tend to use with the bevel for this sub-D modeling technique. So I'm going to come down to the bottom left hand corner once I left click to save my bevel, and I'm going to open up this bevel menu. Then what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to set my segments to 2, and that's going to make it so we have 3 edges in total around the edges of our model. Then the last thing you're going to want to do is change the shape, or sometimes it's called factor in older versions of Blender, to a value of 1. And that's just going to make everything boxed off. And now when I press Tab to come back into object mode, you can see we have more of just like a rounded cube. And if I right click and then choose Shade Smooth, you can see this is giving us a pretty nice result. And I can go ahead and come to my subdivision surface modifier, and if I increase my detail, the shape is going to stay fairly the same. And this is kind of what we've achieved by using this bevel technique. What we've created essentially is something called a holding edge or a supporting loop, which is something a subdivision surface modifier needs in order to help us keep the shape. So think of these supporting loops, which you can also add by pressing Ctrl R and then left clicking, are just additional ways to tighten up your subdivision surface modifier on your object. Let's go ahead and perform the same thing but on the cylinder. I'll left click my cylinder, and first of all I'm going to go ahead and add a subdivision surface modifier. So I can come to add modifier, then come to generate and choose subdivision surface modifier. But if you want a quicker way to do it, you can hold down the Control key and press 2, and you can see straight away that's added the subdivision surface modifier, and it's also added one with 2 subdivisions for our levels, viewport and render. Now the cylinder has gone absolutely bonkers because it needs some holding edges, and also because it's got a massive n-gon on the top. If you don't know what an n-gon is, it's essentially a face with 5 or more edges. And you can see this has got about 32 edges. Before I go ahead and do that bevel, I just want to show you a little bit what I was explaining earlier with the cube in terms of holding edges, and that's that there's a few different ways to do it. So I could press Ctrl R for example and left click, and that's added a holding edge there, and you can see that that's worked as well. And if I wanted to add an edge in here, I could press 3 on the keyboard to go into face select mode, left click this top face, and I could press I to inset, and you can see that that's also created a holding edge, or a support loop. So pretty much a holding edge is whenever you're adding an extra edge close to another one in order to maintain the shape whilst using a subdivision surface modifier. I'll press Ctrl Z to undo those changes, then I'm going to press 2 on the keyboard to go into edge select mode, and I'm going to press Shift Alt left click to select this bottom edge loop, and now we have 2 edge loops selected. And now I'll press Ctrl B, and I'm just going to drag out a bevel like this. and I'll maybe make it quite small. So you can make these bevels as small as you want, depending on how round you want your edges to be. You can see in my bevel settings here, if I left click to open it, it saves our settings of keeping our shape at 1 and our segments at 2. So we don't have to make any adjustments to that. I'll then press tab to come back into object mode, and now I'm going to right click and shade smooth, and you can see we have a nice adjustable cylinder which has some pretty nice shading on it. And I can make this as high detail as I want. So for example, if this was a more interesting model and I wanted to do a close-up shot of it, I could come to the subdivision surface modifier and increase it to maybe 4 subdivisions. And this is why people like to use the sub-D modeling workflow. That way you can easily adjust the subdivision for shots where you've got maybe a zoomed in shot, or also for game models, for example, you could have a sub-D model and then an optimized game mesh, and you could get some of the high subdivision modifier details and bake it onto the lower poly, more game optimized model. So those are some of the use cases for sub-D modeling. But I thought this video would act as a great introduction to probably the most used technique in sub-D modeling, using the bevel modeling tool. If you've watched this video all the way through, you're clearly very interested in 3D modeling. If you want to learn more, I highly recommend checking out my playlist here, where I've got a bunch of different modeling tools which you can learn to enhance your Blender 3D modeling workflow. Apart from that though, I'd like to thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.